Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Chris Voss. He's the founder and CEO of Black Swan Group and author of the best-selling book, Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depends on It. Chris was the lead international kidnapping negotiator for the FBI, and prior to that was a member of the New York City Joint Terrorist Task Force for 14 years. Really happy to have you here, Chris.
Thank you, Andrew. Happy to be on.
All right, Chris, let's dive in now with a favorite success quote or some sort of saying that you've lived by that's really helped you on your journey.
One saying that my son and I joke around about that, I don't know how much it's helped, but, it can't be that hard, which, is almost like the equivalent of the redneck watch this.
It can't be that hard. Now, explain how that has served you as one of the country's finest negotiators.
Well, I think by and large, it's, the willingness to jump in and figure it out with the application of common sense and hard work. I know my accent doesn't make it sound like it, but I'm a blue collar guy from small town Iowa. And we just look, figure it out, jump in, figure it out. It can't be that hard. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you get way into it, and it ends up turning out quite differently than you imagined. But jump in and go for it, I guess.
Yeah, I like that. And we'll dive into some of these scenarios that you found yourself in. I'm just curious. So I just gave you this introduction. CEO of Black Swan Group. FBI leading kidnapping negotiator, New York City Joint Terrorist Task Force for 14 years. You've negotiated with bank robbers and terrorists and have been quite successful. Did you see yourself ever doing any of this stuff when you were younger? How did you find yourself in this role here?
No, I wouldn't say that I saw myself this specifically. I think I always felt that everybody has great possibilities for their life. And so I fall into the category of everybody. I think I'm pretty much a regular guy. And so I always thought that life was going to be really cool and it should be cool and fun and interesting. But, no, I never even figured I'd be in the FBI. I mean, that ended up being a bit of a surprise in and of itself. So no, I didn't see this kind of stuff.
When you were younger, or when you were in school, did you have a way with people or this negotiating, this persuasion? Was it something that you've had kind of innately, or is this something that you've really had to just learn from scratch?
No, a little bit of both. I mean, I think I liked talking with people. Again, and I draw a distinction. There's a difference between talking to someone and talking with someone. I always liked talking with people about stuff I believed in. And so, yeah, and then the rest of it was learned. Once I saw how powerful, the right saying, the right phrase, the right thing said in critical situations, once I saw how powerful that was, I was like, yeah, I want to learn that. That's really kind of cool stuff.
You said something really interesting there. So, I'm not trying to talk to someone, I'm talking with someone. Is that a foundational concept in persuasion or negotiating?
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. It's a complete difference between collaboration and cornering. And if you corner somebody in a conversation, they never stay in the corner. The minute they get the opportunity, they jump out. And that's why some deals never get done, or you can't trust people to perform because they got cornered and they're not going to collaborate because they were cornered. Yeah.
And so, I could absolutely see how this will apply in your work history here, where if you cornered someone, they're probably going to, retaliate or take some sort of action that you obviously don't want them to take.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, when I was working with guys that made cases who got people to cooperate with us and testify voluntarily versus guys that lock somebody up and force them into testimony, having a hammer on them, so to speak. I never respected anybody that only got their witnesses by having a hammer on them, and I worked with a lot of guys that had people who worked with them voluntarily, and they made great cases, and I was always really impressed with those guys, and that I wanted to emulate what they were doing also.
Do you think when you say you try and corner someone, you usually don't get the best result for probably both parties? Do you feel like that has to do with the ego trying to dominate rather than cooperate?
Yeah, it's dominating, and also this whole autonomy issue, where when you take away somebody's right to say no, they'll die over that. I mean, we live in a country that's founded on that, and country after country around the planet if they were colonized by some other country, whether it be the Spanish, the Japanese, the French, the Americans, whoever were the colonial powers that roamed the world. Countries threw off those colonial powers when they first got the chance, because we have this innate desire for autonomy. And it's two separate things. Like, I may not necessarily want to dominate you, but I'm certainly not going to allow you to dominate me.
Okay, so it sounds like when you lose the ability to say no, so when you take away the ability to say no to something, then that is associated with losing my freedom.
Right. Absolutely.
And if I lose my freedom, then I'm no matter what you say, I just feel like I'm being attacked, or I start to go into some sort of retaliation mode.
Right. And the retaliation could take one of two forms. Like, I could overtly do something to you, or I could see something getting ready to develop that's going to hurt you, and I'll just step back and let it happen. And that's really the most common way of where people hurt one another. I mean, we've got a saying in my company that we try to teach clients, where we say, never be mean to someone who could hurt you by doing nothing. And there are a lot of people out there that are like that.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. I'm wondering now, this position of the hostage negotiator. It sounds like there's probably just one or two guys in each, let's say, in the organization, like the lead guys, because you don't want to have like 10 guys trying to negotiate with one guy. So I imagine that there's a lot of people trying to get this role as the negotiator. Is that right?
Well, yeah, there's a bit of a scrum, if you will, trying to work your way up the ladder, and some of it has to do with how well the circumstances work for you, whether or not the universe, if you will, opens the doors for you, and if you choose to step through. And ultimately, yeah, the FBI had one lead international kidnapping negotiator, and that was me, of a total of 10,000 FBI agents in total, and probably about 400 FBI hostage negotiators. There's just one guy in that role, and for a while it was me.
How did you get that role? There's so many guys who would want that role. What did you come from? Some prestigious university? What made them want to choose you?
And really it was like the selection of my peers, if you will. And, there's a lot of conversation these days, like your income is the average of your 5 best friends' income, or, you want to get ahead in life, fire your flaky friends, which is what one colleague talks about, and who you surround yourself with. And throughout my career and most of my life, I like to be around guys who like to have a lot of fun and work really hard. And so if that's who you're always hanging out with, who you work with, then when I was in New York, I gravitated to the guys that worked really hard, had a lot of fun, made great cases. And then you start racking up some successes, and you become known as somebody that other hardworking guys like to work with. And actually, it's kind of easy to move up the ladder when you have that reputation that you work hard and you have a lot of fun, and then you surround yourself with those kind of people, and then as a team you begin to accomplish great things. And it was that way when I was on a terrorist task force in New York, and then when I got to the negotiation unit, we had a bunch of guys together that were really into it, and so we each kind of took our piece, and since we helped each other out in different ways, then my end of it ended up being the international kidnapping, and the guys around me were a great support system.
I know that you had this, to get started, a lady had told you to do some suicide hotline training. She kind of threw you off, like didn't really take you serious, and said, hey, why don't you try this? And you actually did it. Could you explain what that was and what that experience was like as well?
Yeah, it was great because, really, I'm a small town Iowa boy. And the woman that put me onto that, Amy Bondero, was just a tough New York chick. And she was running the negotiation team in New York. And I walked up to Amy one day and kind of presented myself with, sort of like, ta-da, here I am.
I'm ready to start my career.
Yeah. And she kind of looked me up and down, and I'm sure she thought, here's another one. Here's another guy that,
right.
Because being a hostage negotiator sounds cool and everybody wants to do it. I had no resume. I had no history. I had no education. I had no prestigious degree. But, the whole thing, like, it can't be that hard. Just give me a shot. And before she shooed me away, I was just like, look, there's got to be something I could do. And she said there is. She says, go volunteer on a suicide hotline. Now, until you've done that, go away. And like I teach in a couple different business schools, or if I get a chance to speak on a panel to people, not just ask questions on how to get something done, but ask the right person and then do what they tell you to do. If you figured out the right person to get advice, just because you don't happen to like that advice, you need to go do that anyway. And, I didn't care. I wanted to be a hostage negotiator. She told me what to do and I did it. And then she was flabbergasted after the fact. And even when I got back to her to write the book, I said, Amy, I'm going to put you in the book. And she said, she said, I think I told 1,000 people to do that and 2 people did it. And you were one of them.
Wow. I think there's a lot to be said about you get the advice and then you go do it and then you show up and say, hey, I did it. And,
yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said about that. But, if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't have any reason to show up back to her because she already told you what to do. And if you don't do it, kind of wasting her time.
Yeah. And, she didn't even ask me how well I did it. Like if you just go do it and try it at all, you've immediately, if my experience with Amy is any indicator, you have just crossed into the next level, the next tier, and left 99% of your peers behind you simply by doing what you were told. Not even doing it well, just doing it.
Yeah. And so the suicide hotline, how long were you, it's a volunteer, from what I understand, these are volunteer organizations, like nonprofits that do this. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
How long were you doing that for? And what was that experience like for you? I mean, were these people just calling to talk to someone and, or, there's some serious conversations that you had to have where you made a difference?
Well, yeah. I mean, I made a difference with some people. I mean, I ended up being involved with the hotline a total of about 7 years, and in one form or another. And because I have a tendency, if I'm gonna do something, I need to go all in. I don't like going part way. So
yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do it, I mean, jump in. And so I went there, and plus I was there to learn a skill that I really wanted to learn. So that made me throw myself into it even harder. And then I got some great guidance, and I screwed up some. I didn't screw up on the lines that cost anybody anything, but I do remember one call in particular with a non-suicidal person that I had just not done a good job when I was convinced that I had done a good job. It was my annual review. And at the end of the call, actually, the person who called in, who was in crisis, he congratulated me for doing such a great job. And I'm almost breaking my own arm, patting myself on the back on the way over to talk to the supervisor for my review. And he said to me, that was horrible. And I said, wait a minute, don't you understand? Did you hear that guy just congratulate me for being great? And he said, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That's the first point. And I'll tell you what's wrong with that. So even then, I was so blown away by that learning experience that I dove in even deeper. And, I think I did help some people while I was there. I think I really made a difference in a few people's lives.
Is that, so if someone congratulates you, is there a problem with that? Is he kind of compensating for trying to get out of the conversation easily, or what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. So how could that be bad?
Right.
All right. So here's how it's bad, because then you didn't empower them enough. They felt like you did it for them. And then they're only good when they're on the phone with you, because they need you as a security blanket. You have become a crutch. And if you did your job on a hotline, when they get off the phone, they felt empowered. They felt better about their own ability to cope. And that was a point that guy made to me. He says, you're not here for ego gratification. You're here to actually help people be able to handle things better on their own.
Yeah. Okay. I take that. That's good. And so after you get the job and you go through the best training at the FBI. It wasn't too long after where you were called up and there was a bank robbery, which the bank robber actually took hostages, which doesn't, seems to really only happen in Liam Neeson movies, or like it seems like that's really only the movies, but this really, really happened.
Yeah, and the way that evolved too, because again, I think it speaks directly to who I surrounded myself with. Because I remember that morning, and I'm in the office, and I'm actually getting ready to do another interview. And as I'm prepping for this interview, one of the other guys on the team, the negotiation team, comes up to me, and he says, "Hey, there's a bank robbery in Brooklyn with hostages. Let's go." And he was this hard-working, hard-charging, fun guy to be around. His name was Charlie Bogman, and I remember Charlie was one of the most fun people to be around that I'd ever been around. And Charlie came and found me. I had no idea this was going down. I could have stayed in the office, and I probably wouldn't have heard about it for 4 or 5 hours. By then, it had been too late. Uh-huh. But this thing came down, and Charlie says, "Let's go." And so we jumped in the car, and we blasted out there. And, the statistics are that this is not that unusual, but the reality is bank robbers who take hostages plan it out in such a way that they're never caught in the bank. And so that's why this is so rare. It happens in the entire country where you actually negotiate people out about once every 20 years.
Wow.
So because I work with hardworking guys, I got pulled into it.
What's going on through your mind in that car ride? It sounds like you're in New York, Brooklyn area, so there's a lot of traffic, I'm assuming. What's going on through your mind? All right, there's a bank robbery going on. Someone's got a weapon and he's got hostages, and you're the lead guy.
Yeah, I think the ride there, I must have just been sort of blown away, because I just remember the moment Charlie said, "Let's go," to kind of when we got to the bank. But I felt I was ready. I mean, I had been spending a ton of time at that time frame on a hotline. So I knew that my skills were sharp because I've been practicing it. It's all the practice and the prep. Right. It was Louisiana State Trooper one time. He had a saying that I really liked. You don't rise to the occasion, you'll fall to your highest level of training.
Oh, wow.
And so, my level of training at that time was really high. And I knew I was ready. So it hadn't been that long since I'd gone through the negotiation course. My time on a suicide hotline was fresh. So when we got in and the time came that they handed me the phone, I was like, all right, I just gotta fall back on my training, and I'm satisfied that my training is going to carry me through. And also part of my training was, again, to be a team player. And when I was on that call, I got handed at two different times, I got handed 2 notes that were clear turning points in a conversation. And I got handed the note, and I knew right away that it was on the money. And so I took my coaching, I listened to my coaching, and I had breakthroughs in both those moments.
And did the bank robber turn himself in, and the hostages were all released 100%?
Yeah, we had 2 bank robbers on the inside. We had 3 hostages, 2 women and a man. And everybody came out alive. It took about 12 hours in total. And they were actually, when it was all said and done, and my conversation with one of the bank robbers, he ended up giving us some spontaneous evidence that led us to understand that there was a getaway driver that had gotten away because he was the getaway driver. And so when we had enough more information about him, then the investigators went out, found him, and gave him put the handcuffs on him. So we got all the bad guys. They were all convicted in court, and no harm was done to any of the hostages once we arrived. It was the hostage takers had actually had pistol whipped one of the women before we got there, but nobody got hurt after we showed up.
Do you ever, how many negotiations have you done, maybe not to that extent, but where you're negotiating with someone and potentially someone could get hurt?
There were, I was in about probably 5-6 different directly involved where I was on the scene or negotiating sieges in the U.S. There was a number of stuff that I advised on where, there was one that went down in Fort Myers, Florida, and they called me on the phone and laid things out for me. And I said, try this, and I'll guarantee somebody's going to come out within 10 or 15 minutes if you do this. So, there were enough opportunities, either from when I was on the scene or when I was advising, that there were probably 10 or 15 times the outcome would have been ugly the other way around.
Wow. And so
that's just domestically.
Yeah, right. And for the audience, why do I bring on a hostage negotiator to talk about personal development? Because his book, Never Split the Difference, negotiating as if your life depends on it. I think it really applies into all aspects of your life. And in business, obviously, it's clear, even in relationships, and just success in life is going to require effective communication. So when you bring on one of the best negotiators to share his experiences, I think it's all something that we should pay attention to in our journeys in life. So when did you, Chris, realize or have some sort of epiphany that this does apply to life? Like, this isn't just for criminal, this isn't just for law enforcement, but this can be applied to the businessman, to the average civilian.
Well, yeah, when I first started on the suicide hotline, and then, because not everybody calls a hotline is suicidal. A lot of them are just bent out of shape over the problem at the moment. And that just seemed to me to be like so common to day-to-day struggles, and being able to help people relatively quickly. I thought, this has got to apply to day-to-day life. I mean, this stuff is just too effective. Why shouldn't people in day-to-day life be making better connections? Why can't simply understanding, but not agreeing, but if simply understanding someone, it could be completely change the other side's mind if they just felt understood? Why can't this work in day-to-day life and even business? So I started trying to apply it right away. I mean, as soon as I was learning on the hotline, I needed day-to-day interactions to practice on it. And, there are times when you can get so dialed into somebody that I've literally was just using for lack of a better term, they call that active listening. Now I call it tactical listening, tactical empathy. And I've had people say to me, "You're reading my mind." And I remember thinking, like, no, I'm just good at listening between the lines, and it seems like I'm reading your mind. And so I started applying it from the beginning.
It sounds like that was another foundational point there, where you said understanding but not agreeing.
Yeah, very fine line. A lot of people, for some reason, they figure that understanding is tantamount to agreement. And so they're horrified at completely understanding the other side. But, Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, said, seek first to understand, then be understood.
Right.
There's a sequence there. And that was what understand the other side if you want to get your point across. Because they're going to have noise in their head that once they feel completely understood, that noise will quiet. And then they'll actually be far more persuadable at that point in time. And I just learned how to do it on the hotline and then with the negotiation training from the FBI.
It sounds like until the person is understood, that there's this sort of tension, or like there's this wall, and until they feel understood, that tension's going to be there. And then if you can get that across to them, then that wall goes away, and now you can begin negotiation.
That's it exactly. There is a tension in their head, and it's kind of it's almost a schizophrenic voice that says, you got to get your point across. You got to get your point across. And I've even heard, I had a colleague from the Department of State just about 2 years ago visited me, and he said, yeah, I took this negotiation course, and the first thing they taught us was make sure the other side understands where you're coming from. And while that sounds reasonable, in reality, if everybody did that, you'd always have people talking who were intent on making their point, which means nobody's listening. So if I presume the other guy's got a point he or she wants to make, they're dying to tell me, let me get it out of them, and then that tension will go away. They'll relax.
How do you ensure the other person feels completely understood? At what point do you go, okay, got it, and now I can move forward?
It's a real subtle but 1,000% accurate trigger from the other side. When somebody feels they've been understood, what they do is they look at you and they say, that's right. And until they say that's right, to be contrasted with your right, because your right is the equivalent of F off, but that's right is bang. Now they have just told you they feel completely understood, and they will never be more open to listening than they are in the moments that come after those words.
What's the importance of empathy here?
Because it then establishes a two-way street. There's one of the sayings I believe in, and never be mean to someone who could hurt you by doing nothing. If that's true, then and everybody that you interact with, then that also means that they can help you if they felt like it. And so when they feel empathy from you, that's what makes them feel like helping you. So it's a sequencing. I want somebody I talk to feel like helping me, and there's no more powerful moment than when they feel empathy from me. And then now, they're very likely to throw something on the table that I didn't even know they could do. I love surprises. Surprise me with something that you could do for me that I had no idea you had the ability to do. I really like that.
Yeah. I think that's critical. Now, what I'm trying to grasp here is, so we got to seek first we got to understand them before we really share, our point of view.
Right.
And once they feel completely understood, the tension's gone. And so now I'm going to share my point. But if they don't get their way at all, but they just feel understood, that's enough?
Well, what I'm going to do before I want to share my point is I'm going to see if they're going to make the deal for me. And I'm going to, some people have said the art of negotiation will let the other side have your way. So how do I get them to make the deal for me? I'll ask them, so how do we proceed? What looks good here? Because they're going to have a pretty good idea of what I want before we started talking anyway, if they have any sense of the world at all. That's why we're talking.
Right.
So if they feel really understood, then I throw something out like, so how do we solve this? How do we move forward?
It's very cooperative, very, very team. Sounds like you're a partners almost.
Right. And then I'm going to give them the chance to throw out something that works for me. And I'm going to be kind of gentle at it, but I may keep them in a problem-solving mode. I don't know. It's going to be hard. What are some other ideas? Because ownership equals implementation. If I own an idea, I'm going to implement it. And my biggest problem in any given negotiation is not whether or not you're going to agree, but whether or not you're going to live up to the agreement. So I want you to own the ideas by them coming out of your mouth. And so if I ask you enough questions and you finally give me a structure of what I wanted, but I need collaboration, then I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say, great idea. Let's do it your way. And then it's going to happen.
What if their way is not what you're looking for?
Well, then ultimately, and the question is, do you make every deal? Or do you want to make every deal? I might not want to make that deal. And then at that point in time, I'm also conscious of how I'm going to leave them. And I want to leave them feeling respected and that I heard them out. And so if I'm talking to them at all, that means I'm going to be talking to them again. They're in my universe. I'm going to keep bumping into them. Even if I don't want to deal with them again, they're going to talk to people that know me. So they're going to be able to hurt my reputation if they choose to do so. So if I can't make the deal, I've learned a couple of ways to gently say no, to let out no a little at a time, to try to keep collaboration going.
What would that sound like? I think that's an important point. Like, how do you say no but continue being a partner leading to a solution so they don't feel like no is like never or not going to happen?
Right. Okay, well, so the first best way to say that is just to say to the other person, it's important how you say it, but it's just to say to them, how am I supposed to do that? And you're supposed to say that with a certain amount of vocal intonation that lets the other guy know that you can't do that. You're not attacking them. You're not rejecting them. But what's just been laid out there, you can't do. And if you have to say it stronger, if they say, look, well, there's no other way. And if the answer to me is still no, I'll say, look, I'm sorry. I can't do that. That doesn't work for me. And again, I'm trying to focusing my no on the option in front of me at the moment, which continues to leave collaboration open. And that's signaling no. That's letting the other side know, like, hey, look, don't be surprised by this, but a flat no is close by if we don't find another solution. And at that point in time, since I refuse to be taken hostage, that means I reserve the right to say no. If I have to, I say no. And we don't make the deal.
Do you try and solve all negotiations in that moment, or do these take time where you're going to have to revisit, you're going to have to come back to this conversation tomorrow, next week? Is there some sort of statistic that says, hey, if you don't solve this within, today, it's likely to never be solved?
No, it's a great question. It's something I forget about because I take it for granted. Like any issue is probably takes on average about 3 interactions to solve.
Okay.
Don't try to make a deal in one sitting. If you did a good job in the negotiation, you actually found stuff out in that negotiation you didn't know before. And so if you found out new stuff, that means you got to go back and rethink things. I'm actually advising a filmmaker here in town that has an investor that wants to star in a movie. And the investor not only wants to invest and star in the movie, but, I don't know if you remember the Social Network, the movie about the founding of Facebook.
Right.
One. Yeah. And so one actor played both of the Winklevosses. One actor played both roles.
Okay.
So having done that, there's no shortage of actors who want to pull that off again. So this investor wants to play both roles in this film. And so I said, all right, sit down, brainstorm, let them know how hard this is going to be. Through the course of the negotiation, my Hollywood filmmaker finds out that the investor owns a castle in France that she wants to shoot the film in. Now this changes everything because now it takes care of massive budget issues. It opens up a lot of possibilities. And she said when she found that information out, she had to go back and rethink everything. And I was like, oh, my God, thank goodness she didn't try to cut this in one sitting because that's too much information. That's new information. You got to go back. So long story short, you really ought to look at a negotiation to have about 3 interactions because if you're doing it right, you're finding new stuff out in each conversation.
Yeah. So I'm thinking in my mind how this would apply to sales, where you're trying to make that sale on the first phone call or the first touch, where 3 interactions, 3 good touches might be necessary in order to make a sale.
Yeah.
And I think I think it's true too in dating too. Probably not taking her home first night, but 3 good interactions, it's possible. And I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah. The rule of 3 there, it applies to a lot of things in life, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. Yeah. Well, okay. So now, we're getting a lot about the negotiation, and I'm wondering, are you always, because come on, you're like this, I guess I'll call you, master negotiator. Are you always negotiating? Like when you go out to eat, are you negotiating price? Like everything, are you always on negotiating? Is that just how your mind is? Or do you just say, you know what, I'm just negotiating, the big things?
Well, I view negotiations much more broadly than just price. So I get some friends that love to go to dinner with me, not because I'm going to negotiate with the restaurateur or the people or the price of the menu, but I'm probably going to find out stuff about the waiter that nobody else has found out about in a real short interaction. I'm probably going to get the waiter or waitress to laugh with us in stuff that they didn't laugh at that whole night, so they'll notice us and take better care of us. What I'll negotiate is better service.
By understanding them,
making them laugh.
Okay.
Yeah, or when the waiter, if I'm out with my girlfriend, who, fortunately for me, beautiful young lady, is as old as I am, but looks like 20 years younger than me. And so when a waiter comes up, I'll look at the waiter and I'll go, hey, look, if you see her parents, let me know. We'll go out the back. But that's gonna remind the waiter, he's gonna see us in a different way. He's gonna take better care of us than he will anybody else in the restaurant. That's what I'm after.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're really standing out. You're standing out, and that's going to get you better service or better attention. And I think that's important. Is there something that you have to do to get into that state of kind of being more alive and more present? Is this how you are?
No, I think, it's a good, because I think I'm kind of serious and I'm kind of direct. And if I tell myself, look, I'm just trying to have fun here. I just want to have some fun. And it's actually psychologically smart. I've since learned that our brains work up to 31% more effectively if we're in a positive frame of mind. So if I put myself in a fun-loving frame of mind, I'm actually going to think of more stuff. I'm going to be smarter. than I am when I'm trying to be serious, because my brain will slow down the more serious I get.
Yeah, I like that. Is it this whole this is just we often hear about, you can tell if someone's lying if they look to the left, or is it the right, or maybe they scratch their ears, or are these real things? Is there something that you can spot, this guy's lying, or he's not telling me the full truth here?
So the real thing is that you should really look for, because there's so many different ways to lie. Each person might have 5 different ways that they lie, but they've only got one way that they tell the truth. And this is the way that actually a polygraph works. You go on a polygraph and they put all these monitors all over you.
Right.
And then they ask you control questions because they want to know what you look like when you're telling the truth. Those are the control questions. So it doesn't matter whether your heart rate increases when you lie, whether your eyes dilate, whether your breathing changes, whether you hold your breath, whether you look up, you look down, whatever you do. Once you got a line on how somebody tells the truth, then anything that they do other than that is lying. And it's kind of a little bit the opposite of what most people look for, where they want that magic cue. Do I look up and left? Do I look down? Do I hold my breath? Because everybody's got multiple ways that they lie, and it takes less time to figure out what they look like when they tell the truth than to catalog all the ways that they lie.
Okay, so there's too many variables when someone lies, but there's really one way when someone tells the truth. And if we do that, then everything else is disqualified. Yeah,
it gets a lot easier that way, yeah.
I like that. What are the 2 words that transform any negotiation?
That's right. Yeah, that was what we were talking about earlier.
That's right. Okay, so when
somebody says that's right, bang, magic things happen.
That's when you know that you've come to some sort of neutral place where, like, the pendulum has it's like the balance where you can now begin doing the work.
Yeah, and it's even more than neutral. It's they don't know it, but you've just given them this great prod in your direction, which they feel completely under control about. So it's provoking them your direction in a really positive way. So it's so much more than just neutral territory. It's really where you gain the maximum amount of advantages you might possibly gain for them to spontaneously do something that just benefits the heck out of you.
Yeah. So if the other person feels like you're coming up way too hard, like you're getting the better hand of the stick, or you're getting the prize here, then they start to feel like they're losing, like at loss, and therefore the negotiation is likely to stall, or they're going to react in a negative way.
Yeah, exactly. If you feel you won, then that means the other side feels beaten. And if they feel beaten, they're going to resent you and they're going to want to pay you back. And they will, one way or another. And what most people come to master is this passive aggressive payback, when they just refuse to lift a finger to help you, and knowing that by doing nothing it will hurt you. And that's really what the vast majority of the planet has come to learn, the ability to hurt other people by doing nothing.
So is the goal to make it win-win, or just more so understand them, you're getting your way? Because in a hostage negotiation, I mean, do they really win? I mean, don't you just want them to surrender?
Yeah, well, winning like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Leverage, victory and losses. It can completely be changed based on how you categorize something.
Okay.
Like, I use the phrase in my book, learn what their religion is. Because in reality, when you understand, what constitutes moving towards an extremely bright future for a bigger and better life, it's stunning what people are willing to go through in order to get there. Like, for example, Navy SEALs.
Right.
They take those guys down to Coronado and they put them through the most brutal physical territory, short of, and a lot of them actually get injured. But they beat the hell out of these guys.
Hell Week. Yeah, that's what it's called. Hell Week.
But why do these guys do this? Because they have a vision of it taking them someplace better. So as soon as you can start to grasp, you get your mind on, how somebody sees a better and brighter future for them. And if they see you as part of that future, that's how they win. Or if maybe in a given interaction, everybody else on the planet that day has just been pounding them. I'm on the phone actually earlier today trying to get some tax information out of the university I'm an adjunct at. And I get on the phone with the guy at the help desk, and if he's at the help desk, that means everybody's been yelling at him.
Right.
Nobody calls the help desk when they're happy.
Right. Absolutely not.
And so he's walking me through this email that is just screwed so many people up that I know everybody has yelled at him about it. And so I said, okay, all right. Now what do I do? And it was then that he told me, he says, well, you're going to need this information, this information, this information. And he said, and I can give that to you. And that, I remember thinking to myself, here's where a guy that could have let me go try to figure the rest of this out on my own for the next 2 hours. That's how long it would it take me to pull together and find the information. And he had it at his fingertips. And since I was the one guy that was just plessing with him on the phone instead of yelling at him how stupid it was, he ends up saving me over 2 hours of my time in the afternoon.
So you understood his worldview. You kind of understood and called out some of his pain points, perhaps in a fun way that makes him feel, this guy understands me, understands where I'm, or what I've been going through all day.
Yeah. Or if I was fun to talk to. I'm the one person. I was the one person that wasn't mean to him today. Never be mean to somebody who could hurt you by doing nothing. He had the opportunity to burn up 3 hours of my life or give them back to me, and he gave them back to me.
That's one way to look at it. Wow. Let's dive into the knowledge round. I just wanted to ask you some rapid fire questions here. So just kind of gut level responses here, Chris. So are you ready for the knowledge round?
All right. Now, do I win extra points for this? What happens? Do I go on to Final Jeopardy after this?
Yep. There's a car. There's a winning car if you get the point, all the questions right. It'll show up at your door.
All right. I'm ready.
All right. So the first question I have for you is, looking back at your journey, you've learned an incredible amount. And so I'm wondering, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling really lost and unsure of which direction they should go in?
The universe is far more forgiving than we imagine it to be. So if you got an opportunity, if you feel lost, it's because you've got opportunities, you're not sure whether or not you should step through the door. And we see 17 problems where one or two exist. There's a saying, somebody famous was quoted as saying, my life is filled with tragedies, some of which actually happened. So, go through the door. You got an opportunity, you wonder whether or not you should. If you wonder whether or not you should, then my advice to you is that you should. And go ahead and go for it. The universe is going to be far more supportive than you imagine it will be, and the outcome will be great.
I love it. What do you think is holding most men back from becoming stronger, grounded men today?
Some of it is the societal rules that we perceive to be held on us. And that, as a man, you're supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be the guy who's there the whole time. I mean, you're not supposed to make any mistakes. And then society holds up success as if they're, Superman. And I recently got Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans. And in it, one of the first things he points out is the people that he interviewed that are enormously successful are also enormously flawed. They just happen to have a great strength that they built around, but none of them are perfect. Yeah. So the idea that you should be perfect and that you shouldn't be flawed, I think really holds people back, because the greatest success stories, as enormously successful as they are also enormously flawed. We just don't see it.
Yeah, really. And I think it just makes them seem more human. And when someone seems more human, like they're like me. And if they were able to do it, then, maybe I can too.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So your book here, Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depends on It. Guys, you want to check this out. It's got close to 500 reviews and it's got 5 stars. Okay. So I don't think I've seen that. Just usually it's 4.5 stars. So you got a 5-star book here, about 500 reviews. I just want to give credit to your book here, Chris, but I'm also interested in what have been 3 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey.
All right, so I like Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans, a lot. It's a reiteration of a lot of success patterns. I'm also currently reading Ayn Rand's book, The Fountainhead, which a lot of really successful entrepreneurs, like if there's 1 or 2 books that they point to all the time, this happens to be one of them. Mark Cuban likes it. A lot of other people like it.
What's the title? You said it's by Ayn Rand?
I think it's Ayn Rand, A-Y-N Rand, The Fountainhead.
Oh, okay. The Fountainhead. Okay.
Yeah, it's and I've been amazed at the number of people that have read that book and really got a lot out of it. So I like that. I like that book a lot. And then Adam Grant is a brilliant author, and his book Originals is really worth reading.
All right. Really good books here. I'll have to check some of these out, throw them on my wish list. Now, the next question is more of a scenario. So imagine you had 60 seconds with 25-year-old Chris. If you can envision where he's at personally, professionally, even in his relationships, go ahead and share, what would you tell him to do and what would you tell him not to do?
I would tell him to take it a little bit easier on people. I mean, be no less strong in your convictions, just be nicer about it. Don't be so hard on people. I think it was a little harder on people than I should have been. Not that I shouldn't have been any more assertive on any of my principles, but I should have done it in a nicer way. And I would say notice people more. I kind of get so caught up in my head that sometimes I don't see the people around me and notice the important people. And it's really and I'm not saying that that's stop and smell the roses or it's slowing down any. I'm just saying just notice them a little bit more, appreciate them a little bit more. And those would really be the two biggest things.
Really, really good, really simple. And even if you have to summarize some of your main points that you may have shared in this episode so far, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Well, I think life is an amazing ride if you let it be. And success is a little bit of an illusion. Success is fragile. There's a poem that says, if you can meet with victory and success and treat those two imposters just the same. The first time I heard that, I thought to myself, what? And so that made me, success is about, it's going to sound like a cliche, but being willing to fail and just trying to stick to who you are.
Yeah, I like it. And that's going to wrap up the knowledge round there. Thank you so much. And so what's exciting you now today, Chris? What's getting you out of bed in the morning?
You said there were 500 reviews, almost 500 on Amazon, and they're almost all 5-star. I love finding out about new people that have taken something they learned in my book and use it to make a deal they wouldn't have otherwise have made, or found themselves some breathing space in a deal and had good things happen. I get the biggest kick out of people learning from this book and using it to make their life better. And I want to hear more stuff about that every day.
Yeah, really good, guys. Go ahead and check the book out, Never Split the Difference, on Amazon, available in all different formats. And you can follow up with Chris more about his work and his company, the Black Swan Group, at blackswanltd.com, or simply Google the Black Swan Group and it pops up number 1. And you could also just Google Chris Voss. I typed in Chris Voss negotiation, and you can see a lot of other major media outlets that Chris has been on so that you can learn more about the work that he does. Chris, it's been a pleasure having you here on the show, sharing your story and all the invaluable pieces of negotiation advice that I'm excited to implement today.
Andrew, thank you very much. I really enjoyed being on with you today.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of KnowledgeForMen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.